First thing I want to ask you is this, though. How do you know that someone has changed? Now, I'm sure all of us can agree that there's a difference between someone telling you that they've changed and someone actually showing you that they've changed. And for many people, it's easy to recognize when someone is changing for the worse. We can recognize the decline. It's something that we say, you know what, there's something different about them. They're not who they used to be. But it becomes a lot harder to recognize when someone is changing for the better. Or more importantly, it's more harder to trust that someone is changing for the better. Because once trust has been destroyed, it's oftentimes difficult to reestablish that trust. And that is the problem, or the hurdle, the hindrance that is affecting the more than 32,000 men and women in South Carolina's prisons. It's convincing someone that they have changed. Now, during my 20-year incarceration, I observed plenty of examples like this. My first cellmate, he had already been incarcerated for 36 years when I came into the system. Almost 40 years, almost 4 decades. And he spent those entire decades without one single infraction within SCDC. Not a write-up in a minor way or a major way, yet and still, year after year, he was denied parole. And there are other examples, like my good friend Ronald Dingle and Robert Diggs, who were sentenced as juveniles, and right now, as men in their late 40s, are still being denied a second chance at redemption. Now, the men I've mentioned, they're not just inmates. They are also authors, college students, mentors to other men within the system. And yet and still, even though they are exhibiting change on a consistent basis, there was still a consistent denial of the men that they are now. Now, although I was never eligible for parole, I served an 85% sentence, I can relate. Because when I first came into the system, fresh from R&E, when I arrived at Broad River, the only thing anyone was ever talking about was, hey, there's a bill on the floor and they're gonna change this 85%. They're gonna give us a chance to come home a little bit earlier. And so I was excited. I ran down to the payphone and I called my mother. I said, Umi, guess what? They're gonna change this 85%. I may be home a little bit sooner. And she said, baby, listen, whatever you do, don't get in no trouble. Keep your nose clean so that when the bill passes, there'll be nothing that hinders you from coming home. So year after year, I held on to that hope. See, going in, I knew that prison was going to change me. But I made a conscious decision to change myself for the better. And so, during that time, whenever I was given a work assignment, guess what I did? I worked hard. I became trustworthy. I learned the skill. I learned the trade. I also taught myself how to create fine art. I'm an artist. I mentored youth as well as straight timers. Older guys would come to me and we would talk, we would communicate. As well as using my love for music to build a platform so that other incarcerated individuals nationwide could share their story through music to the entire world. I always had a hope that this would be the year, that this would be the year that I got some relief. But to be honest with you, 20 years of that, and guess what? It never happened. And I guarantee you right now, this day, that there are countless men and women within SCDC that are saying that same thing to themselves. This year may be the year. And they're looking for that change, whether it be for parole or a change in the 85%. And any of you that are familiar which I'm sure probably most of you are, that the most common reason we hear for the denials is the nature of the crime. And for those who are serving 85% sentences, it's because you're a violent offender. Both of these are references to the past. There is no criteria, no checklist, or no evaluation in place to recognize the changed men and women who stand before parole boards or live day to day serving mandatory sentences. There is only the long-standing memory of who they were. If those in authority aren't looking for change, aren't recognizing change, then nothing will change. The compassion and reassurances that we all share to our family and loved ones who are behind those fences, it's like rainwater to them. It's soothing. And I say this from a first-hand point. When my mother would tell me, well, just maintain, just keep your head up, just keep praying. That was reassuring. But legislation is going to be the cup that allows them to catch that soothing rain and truly quench their thirst. I believe that only through a system of checks and balances can the change that so many men and women are exhibiting truly be recognized. I am not the same man that I was 20 years ago. And I ask you, are any of you, be you an ex-felon or someone who has never had a brush with the law, are any of us the same person we were 20 years ago? It's virtually impossible. So I say that whatever can be done to open the eyes to the change that has occurred and what our men and women is what our men and women need more than anything, in my opinion. Because I believe that this is the key to open the door to re-entry and reuniting families. I work for a record label called Freer Records, and we go into prisons throughout the United States, and we record music and poetry of people who are incarcerated. And there is one underlying theme to all of their music and their poetry. And guess what that is? I have changed.
Yeah.
That is all they're singing about, rapping about, poetry about, is I have changed. And there is nothing more frustrating than when you are putting in the work to change. You are doing the change consistently, and that change is not being recognized. Having that change recognized, I believe, is the first step to some real change for our loved ones behind those fences. I hope that something I said has touched your heart. I hope that my words have been true and direct to you. And I ask that peace and blessings be for us all. Thank you for your time.